Hello and welcome to the CNBC TV 18 special. We're coming to you from the World Economic Forum's annual meeting at Davos. I'm Shereen, Bhan, and we're in conversation with a man who knows India and has been an India visitor for 25 years, John Studzinski, the Senior Managing Director and Vice Chairman of Blackstone. Thank you very much for joining us on CNBC TV 18.
Thank you.
Let me start by asking you about what you make of India, especially in the context of demonetization. Is that something that you've been talking to investors about? Are investors asking you questions, given the fact that you know Prime Minister Modi and have worked with the Gujarat administration in the past?
I think investors are just focused on the fact they still see India as one of the best countries in which to invest globally, looking at growth in the GDP this year in excess of 6.5%, or 7%, depending on where you talk. The demonetization, I think one regards the demonetization very similar to what you're seeing all around the world. It's just good domestic housekeeping. In this case, obviously, as Mr. Modi said, sold it well among the population, whether it's focusing on anti-corruption or anti-black money or trying to get people to pay their taxes or whatever. But it's seen, like you're seeing all around the world today, lots of domestic issues, lots of domestic housekeeping. It's all part of this broader nationalistic movement.
I'll come to this move that we're seeing around the world, but I want to finish off with my India-related questions. You know, the big hope is that the FII flows and the FDI flows will continue to be robust. But given the fact that you've now got the developed markets led by the US, sort of seeing an uptick, seeing a recovery, President-elect Trump has promised to bring down corporate taxes quite significantly and so on and so forth. Do you believe that the emerging market story, and within that basket specifically India, may lose out?
Well, of course you can't generalize about emerging markets anymore. The notion of a certain number of emerging markets all behaving the same. What you've seen since 2008 is emerging markets have decoupled and they've all behaved very differently. But if you look at the most interesting emerging markets today, I would have to say that there's no question that India is at the top of the list. It's a big market, it's a big population, and there's still got a long way to go in terms of growth potential. And remember, for the last 2 or 3 years, it's been in a state of flux, and now the growth has returned, and people can see the growth coming through a number of sectors, for example, in real estate.
Real estate, you still like real estate in India?
You have to like real estate in India long term because you've got restructuring, ongoing restructuring of commercial investment, corporate investment, not just in the tier 1 cities, but in the tier 2 cities. So of course real estate is going to be, both in the interim and long term, a very good asset class in India, particularly commercial real estate.
And from an FDI perspective as well, it's been a good year actually for real estate from a foreign direct investment, specifically a private equity point of view. Do you see real estate continuing to draw in private equity investment?
You know, it's interesting. If you look at real estate, commercial real estate in the United States, it's actually become the second largest asset class after stocks and bonds. And I can see India long term, if you're someone really looking at a risk-adjusted, tangible, bulletproof, transparent asset class, where are you going to go in India? You're not going to go to any of the regulated industries like power or the concern about retail. You're going to go to something that's very tangible, very much a real asset, and of course real estate is first and foremost on the list. So I would remain very bullish on real estate for India.
Let me ask you about the U.S. now, and as I said, no one quite knows what the new president is likely to do. I mean, there's this talk about an expansionary policy, of being able to bring down corporate tax rates, of imposing import tariffs perhaps. I think the world is grappling with what President Trump means for corporate America and for the rest of the world. What are you going to be watching out for?
I think the world, and remember, the election in the United States was very much what I characterize as a change agent election. People were voting against the status quo. And I think to a certain extent Mr. Modi won his election as sort of the new broom, against the Gandhi family and against the Gandhi sort of what they stood for over the last sort of decades. What we're going to be looking for is change. And I think the president-elect, one can't be specific about the priorities. He's talked robustly about trade. He's talked robustly about fiscal stimulus. He's talked about, to a lesser extent, but infrastructure investment. So I think people are going to be looking for tangible steps to focus on job creation.
You know, when you were here at Davos last year, you were not that optimistic about recovery in the U.S. economy. In fact, you had said that you probably see an industrial yes, a manufacturing recession in 2017 as far as the U.S. is concerned. But it's turning out differently, isn't it? Are you optimistic now, more optimistic about the U.S.?
Well, I think I was clearly wrong, but I think, and this year, of course, one's looking for growth rates of the economy of around 3%. But you have to look at where a lot of that growth came from last year. Remember, a lot of the growth in the United States is driven by the technology sector. And the technology sector, a large portion of that is the consumer. It's the mobile software and that whole technology and innovation revolution and evolution. So I think that that continues to be perhaps much more robust. Mr. Trump, of course, is interested in bringing back more and or retaining more manufacturing and certain types of other goods and services production in the United States. And of course, on a case-by-case basis, he may well be successful.
What does the Trump presidency mean for the U.S.-China relations? Do you believe that the possibility of a trade war in 2017 between the U.S. and China is likely?
You know, it's very interesting. The press likes to try to extrapolate things into instant soap operas.
Yes.
And I think we should just, I think one of the things about President Trump is he's very pragmatic as a businessman. And I think he knows that China, of course, as you look around the world, although I think we're operating very much in a G0 world right now, there is the mindset of a G2 world with America and China having to be two constituents, having to get to know each other. And I think, importantly, President Trump and President Xi are both strong leaders in their own way. And we're now operating in a very different environment. We've got in Asia, Abe, Xi, Duterte in the Philippines, very strong leaders. You've got Putin, Erdogan, General Nisi in Egypt, and you've got President Trump. So I've just listed sort of 7 strong individuals. So I think the Trump-Xi dynamic is going to be very important in terms of one-on-one communication and what they discussed in their first meeting.
What about the Brexit and life for the UK post the Brexit? Because when you were here last year, you said that it will be a win-win for the UK. Do you continue to believe that?
I think the Brexit will be a win-win, only because I'm very pragmatic. Theresa May said Brexit means Brexit. We've got to get on with it. I think there's going to be a rocky period of, and we're seeing it now, of uncertainty. I think there's going to be 2 or 3 years where a number of industry trade relationships are going to be unclear. I think the US and the UK anchoring a trade agreement in the next 3 to 6 months will be very important as a template for what the UK ultimately tries to negotiate with the rest of Europe. But I think in 5 years, you have to remember the UK is the 5th largest economy in the world. And in some respects, given all the problems Europe's facing, it may well be a win-win, because in the UK leaving, it's forcing Europe to a certain extent to rethink how it operates among itself as well.